Okay, so last night we got our jokes off. Today we take a more serious look at the Clippers. Because now this team is under immense pressure. Because they've got one season to convince Paul George and Kawhi to stay. Because they don't have much else. With the amount of draft picks that they've traded, they really have no other options besides keeping those two long term. So, next season is going to be really fascinating. If they're not great, however many games into it, I really wouldn't be shocked if some Paul George trade rumors started floating around. Kawhi, I don't know, because Kawhi just might be too good to trade, barring last night's Game 7 performance by him. I really don't know on that front, but other things we can speculate about, and the first thing to speculate is Doc Rivers. Between this loss, the loss to Houston back in the Blake and CP days, as well as the loss to OKC, it's not looking great for Doc with his entire Clippers tenure. I mean, it's pretty good, and he certainly handled the Donald Sterling situation beautifully, by all accounts. But if you were going to fire him after this one, I think that would be fair. I mean, the main things in this series were the minutes between Montrez and Zubac, when Zubac was clearly better this series. And the other thing was the defense on Jokic, where they double-teamed him, and it's like, well, he's kind of the best passer in the NBA besides like LeBron and Chris Paul. So are we really going to do this? Oh, we are going to do this. Okay, he got 13 assists last night. Nuggets made some shots, give him credit, sure, but clearly it didn't work as we saw last night. And, you know, Steve Ballmer, I feel like I don't know how much actual basketball knowledge Steve Ballmer has, but it seems like he's always believed in Doc to some pretty high levels. And if it was ever going to come to an end, I think last night's loss could be it. And in terms of who would be a replacement for Doc, I don't totally know. I mean, I think Kenny Atkinson is the best coach available on the market. I mean, I guess in terms of pedigree and accomplishment, it's D'Antoni. Like, Kenny Atkinson hasn't done a whole lot in the NBA besides the impressive rebuild with the Nets. But I do think he's a good coach, and I think he can coach a good team. But so, I don't know. There's a chance Doc is not gone. We're just going to have to wait and see on that one. If I was Ballmer, I would fire Doc. But at the same time, it's also like with PG and Kawhi having 1 year left, effectively. It's technically 2. They got the player options. They're probably going to decline them. Do you want to rock the boat that hard? I mean, if those two go to bat for Doc Rivers, you might just have to keep him, because at this point you are clinging on to anything you can do to make sure both of those guys stay. So we'll see what happens with Doc. If those two really like him, then maybe he has to be here. But when you look at this team's chemistry, that's the word coming out right now. Can you blame Doc for some of it? Yeah, potentially, but also Kawhi doesn't talk. And at a certain point, you have to talk a little bit, man, if you're going to be the leader of the team. Like on Toronto, you got away with it because they had such a great infrastructure, but this Clippers team is probably going to be a little different. So yeah, we'll see what happens with Doc. In terms of improving the team, well, let's go to the draft pick situation. Don't have a pick this year. 2021, 23, and 25 are locked up in protections, pick swaps, whatever you want to say. 2022, 24, and 26 straight up going to the Thunder. Not exactly an ideal situation if you want to improve this team. Now, they do have some second round picks, but it's the 50s in the draft. It's effectively nothing, right? Could they buy some team's 30-something pick? Maybe. I think it's a really stupid idea to sell a pick in the 30s, but I guess you could maybe get one or two if you try hard enough, because that is a thing you can do. We remember the Bulls just straight up sold their draft pick to the Warriors, and that led to Jordan Bell, I think it was. So you could try that, but besides that, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they can trade any pick for a very long time, because some they just don't have, and others, once it's in a pick swap, I don't think you can move it. So anyway, looking at the roster, are they going to re-sign Montrez? He wasn't good in the playoffs, so if you wanted a reason to let him go, that'd be that. Zubac was not as flashy as Montrez in this postseason, but the on-off numbers were better with him by a wide margin. He's better defensively. He, I guess you could say, sets screens better, and he just kind of does his job at a good enough level to where you could argue that it's better than Montrez giving you 17 a night and shaky defense and whatever else. but maybe they're just desperate to keep whatever they got to where they will hold on to Montrez. I mean, you start looking around for the teams that could give Montrez a contract, and the only one I can look at where I think it's a pretty easy fit is Charlotte, just because their big man situation isn't great, but everybody else either has a front court that they're kind of locked into, or they just don't really have the money. Unless Montrez is going to make a lot less money than I think he could make. I guess what would it be, like $15 million a year, give or take, for Montrez? I mean, if I'm giving Van Fleet 20, Van Fleet's better than Montrez, maybe, I don't know, 16, 17 or so. And it's like, well, Atlanta's got a bunch of cap space, but they've got Collins and Capella already. The Pistons, I mean, they already got Christian Wood, who I'm assuming they're going to do anything to re-sign. So there may not be some obvious bidder stealing Montrez away from the Clippers, and again, maybe they hold on to him. I guess another scenario is they could organize a sign and trade with Harrell to where they can get themselves back some actual assets. And if they were going to do that, then that opens up a lot more teams. I mean, anybody who would want Montrez at that point could get him if they had the salary to match and whatever. So I guess that's a possibility. Although, just to state the obvious, Montrez would still have his pick of what team he wanted to go to. Should be said, they're already over the salary cap for this upcoming offseason. So do you hold on to Marcus Morris? I think if you can re-sign him at a pretty decent price, I mean, he's making 15 right now. I don't know if you can really give Montrez the money he wants and the money that Morris wants and not be over the luxury tax. And Morris wasn't too great in round 2 against the Nuggets either, and maybe that's what you're deciding everything on. I mean, I don't think you should be too short-sighted with your roster decisions, but you could convince me of a lot of things with this Clippers team right now. So they've got some decisions to make there. I think in terms of other tradable assets, there is Zubats, which that would be a tough one to swallow, but if you're talking about young players who other teams would want that you could get something for, I don't even know what that something would be. I don't know if you're going to get a first round. You're not getting a first round pick for Zubats, but could you get a couple of decent seconds or something? Maybe, but again, Zubats is like quietly the 4th best player on this team or something. I think the one guy that you could get something for would be Shamet, but he only makes $2 million next year. There's not a lot of good players who make $2 million, so then you got to pair him up with another contract, and it's like, are you going to trade Lou Will? Maybe. You're going to trade Patrick Beverley? I mean, that's the way you can actually get into at least $10 million and up to where you can start to maybe have a player you could move. I mean, could you put JaMychal Green and Shamet together, 2 solid players, and get yourself back? I mean, what does this team even need? I think they need more playmaking, sure, but it's tough to find a guy like that. So yeah, I mean, to me, when I start looking at just the obvious ways to improve here, besides just run it back and hope for the best with a new coach, I guess it's you organize a sign and trade for Montrez, you maybe organize a sign and trade for Morris, although with a sign and trade, the new contract has to be a 3 or a 4-year deal. And I don't know if anybody wants to give Marcus Morris that long of a contract when he's, I believe, about to be 32 years old. But they might just have to move somebody that they like. Like, I'm sure they wouldn't want to trade Beverly, but if you're looking for the contract that can lead to a real move, it's him. He's making $13 million next year. That or Lou Williams, I guess. I mean, in terms of other moves, they've got their mid-level, which is $9 million. You could get yourself a good player with that. You can't re-sign Montrez and use your mid-level unless you want to go over the luxury tax. Granted, they may be able to find a way to get off of like Magruder's money or something, but even then, how do you do that? You don't really have picks. Usually to get off of money, you move a pick or two, I mean, I guess they still have their second rounders, but again, those are going to be so deep in the second round, they're kind of useless. So I guess the other option is you hope that some of these young dudes who haven't really gotten minutes take off a little bit. Like there's Kabengele, who is a center. He's 6'9". I don't know if he's going to get in the rotation. There's Terrence Mann, who is a 6'5" 2-guard. I don't know much about him. Maybe they got somebody in the G League who looks pretty good. I don't know, man. I'm kind of running dry on obvious ways to improve this roster. Because again, like when you don't have picks to move, it gets very difficult. So yeah, man, I'm kind of out of options. If there's a chance that Shamet is actually available, I would very much enjoy my Celtics finding a way to get Shamet. But I don't know if that's going to happen. But again, I'm looking at the Clippers situation. I'm like, I mean, if you're going to try to improve the roster, someone's going to have to get moved. I don't know. That'll do it for me. Montrez sign and trade. Try to buy some draft picks. Probably fire Doc. And hope for the best. That's all I got, man.